Educating and Engaging Your Missouri State Legislators. Presented to you by Tim Green, a member of IBEW Local 1, and also with the St. Louis NECA Contractors Association. Before we begin the discussion on right to work, I'd like to first take us back to what has transpired in 4 states north of Missouri. The GOP legislature passed right to work legislation in Indiana on February 1st, 2012. It was signed into law that day and became effective September 12, 2012. On this slide, if you look at the far right corner, in the state of Indiana, the union density is 11%, meaning 89% of the workforce does not belong to an organized union. Our next slide is the state of Wisconsin. In April of 2011, they ran a candidate for Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court who was widely expected to strike down the law. She lost. That following July and August of 2011, they ran recall elections of state senators, needing 3 labor-friendly Democratic senators to win. They failed. And then soon after, they tried to recall the governor, and he defeated the recall. So that is 3 times in the state of Wisconsin, labor tried to change the outcome of the passage of right to work, and they failed. Now, if you look at the lower left-hand corner, it says union density, 13%, meaning that 87% of the workforce in the state of Wisconsin does not belong to a union. Now we are at the state of Michigan. A lame duck GOP legislature passed right to work legislation in Michigan after labor failed with a ballot initiative in November of 2012, sensing labor's weaknesses and unpopularity with a voting public. So this was passed, as I stated, in November of 2012 in a lame duck session. The union density in the state of Michigan is 17%, meaning 83% of the workforce does not belong to a union. Now, the last 3 slides I showed you gave you a negative outcome with right to work legislation in 3 northern states. I want to leave you with a positive note in the state of Ohio. We Are Ohio collected nearly 1.3 million signatures to put Senate Bill 5 repeal vote on the November 2011 ballot. We Are Ohio raised more than $26 million, enlisted upwards to 17,000 volunteers, knocked on more than 1 million doors, and made close to that many phone calls to Ohioans. 7 months after the Republican Governor John Kasich signed Right to Work for Less into law, Ohioans repealed Senate Bill 5. 2.4 million votes cast. Issue 2, the up or down ballot referendum deciding Senate Bill 5, was defeated by a 62% margin. So we do have positive outcomes when we educate and articulate our message to our constituents. Now, the union density in this state is 12%. So I showed you Michigan with 17%. I showed you Wisconsin with 13%. And we also showed you Indiana. Now we've shown you Ohio with 12%, and they were successful in repealing the right to work legislation. Now we come to the state of Missouri, our home state. And as this slide shows you, our union density is 8%. Basically meaning that 92% of the workforce does not belong to a union. So of the 4 previous states, Missouri, with Missouri being the most southern, we have the less union density. And I just want to make that analysis to each of you. The legislature has the ability to select the date of an election for a ballot measure and bypass the governor. So many times we have heard with Democratic Governor Jay Nixon that he is our safe stopping measure on right to work legislation. That is if the bill goes to the governor. Bills can either go to the governor or bypass the governor by going to the vote of the people. On a quote by current Senator Rob Schaaf from St. Joseph on a different issue that was vetoed by the governor, he stated that amending the Constitution is the best option because that way whatever the Republican-dominated legislature passes would go straight to the state voters and would not need Democratic Governor Jay Nixon's signature. This slide shows you a quote from Speaker Tim Jones a year ago, January 4th, 2013, and that was the beginning of last year's session. And in that, he stated the goal of ultimately limiting union influence, including legislation that would prevent labor unions from deducting dues from members' paychecks, which he called the ultimate goal, is right to work. Then, if you look at this next slide, at a private ALEC fundraiser in Chicago, Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder predicted that on August 9, 2013, that the Missouri Legislature will place right to work on the 2014 ballot. He was quoted, "I believe we will pass right to work next year and bypass the governor entirely by putting the referendum on the ballot for the voters." So once again, this shows what previous slides have also shown, that you can go around the governor by going to the vote of the people, and that the legislature can also select the election in which that referendum would be placed before the voters. Now, if you recall 2 slides ago, I showed you a quote from Speaker Jones, January 2013. And then the next slide was a quote from Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder in August of 2013. Now we're in the year of 2014, and at the beginning of session, this is a quote from Speaker Jones. "It's time for Missouri to have the debate as to whether we should become the 25th state that allows their workers to have the ultimate in freedom and choice. I say that because this is no longer an experiment or an anomaly. I don't want to do it for political theater. I want to do it to change policy." Slide, let us ask the question, what is right to work? Because so many people use it quickly in their sentences, but some people really don't know the true meaning. Right to work has nothing to do with guaranteeing anyone a job. The so-called right to work laws have nothing to do with anyone being forced to be a member of a union or to support political causes he or she disagrees with. It is already the law that no one in Missouri can be forced to be a member of a union or be forced to contribute even a single cent to politicians or political causes he or she opposes. This is what I want you to take serious note of. The so-called right to work laws make it illegal for employees and their employers to negotiate fair share arrangements by banning unions and employers from entering into union security agreements or fair share agreements. A right to work law for less is a partisan ploy that undermines the basic rights of the workers. By making unions weaker, these laws lower wages and living standards for all workers in the state. So once again, what we need to take out of this slide is it says it's freedom of choice for the employers. You're eliminating choice for the employers. There are many employers in the state of Missouri that choose to be signatory with collective bargaining agents, and that's what you're taking away. Now, let's talk about a few simple facts about right to work and right to work states. Median household incomes are $535 less per month in right to work states. More jobs are in low wage occupations in right to work states. If you live in a right to work state, you're more likely to be uninsured. More children are uninsured in right to work states. Also, higher poverty and infant mortality rates in right to work states, as the slide shows, 15% higher. And roughly $3,400 a year is less spent on public education in right to work states. Now let me explain how we get that number and how you can say less money is being spent on public education. Well, the way you generate revenues, tax revenues, to finance public education in the state of Missouri is threefold. One is your local property tax. The other one is through your income tax. And the third one is through the state sales tax. So if you earn less money, that means less tax revenues come into the state. And if you earn less money, you have less purchasing power. If you have less purchasing power, that means you're buying less. When you buy less, that's less sales tax revenue. So when there's less revenues coming into the state, there's going to be less revenues to spend on public education. In right to work states, there are higher death rates on the job, 36% higher. In unemployment, 6 out of the 10 states with the highest unemployment rate are right to work states. So once again, the argument that if a state goes right to work, there will be lower unemployment, that is just not an accurate fact. Now, on this slide, we're going to compare Missouri to other surrounding right-to-work states. Once again, in the previous slide, we talked about unemployment. Well, here's the comparison. Missouri currently, as of November 2013, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has a 6.1% unemployment rate. At the same time, all of these states that are right to work have higher unemployment rates. You can exclude Texas that has the same as Missouri, but once again, that argument that it will lower unemployment because we'll be able to get more jobs to come to Missouri if we go right to work is a fallacy. Also is the uninsured rate. You can see in the comparison 14% of Missourians are uninsured. In right to work states, all the other ones, a couple are tied with us, but a majority of the right to work states surrounding us have higher uninsured rates. On this slide, we continue the comparison with right to work states. Missouri has 816,900 people on Medicaid. That is the state program that helps the poor and the elderly who do not have insurance. If you look at all the right to work states to compare with, they all have higher Medicaid, so that's more people that are uninsured. And then if you look at the next column, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, that is the so-called food stamps program. You can see percentage-wise, all the right to work states have higher people on public assistance food stamps. So in these right to work states, we have more people on public assistance because they're uninsured and they don't earn enough to be able to afford proper nutrition. Now once again, I'm going to go about the ways to enact. As I said previously, there's always that feeling that with Governor Nixon we can stop the right to work measure by a veto. Once again, this slide shows you that if you get a simple majority in the Missouri House of Representatives and a simple majority in the Missouri Senate, you can place an issue on the ballot, and once again you can also determine the date of the ballot initiative. Once again, we're still in the legislative process, and as I stated in the previous slide, a simple majority to get through the Senate. There are 34 state senators. You need 18 to pass a resolution through the Senate. Currently, there are 24 Republican senators. Another tool used in stopping the right to work issue in the past has been the filibuster in the Senate. And this is a tool of senators just standing and discussing an issue on and on until eventually the issue is placed on the informal calendar. But you can stop that filibuster also with a majority of 18 votes. Once again, there are currently 24 Republican senators. They only need 18. So you need to work and try to get enough Republican senators that will support not putting right to work out to the ballot, or at least support not stopping a filibuster. Now we're at the Missouri House of Representatives. There are 163 members of the Missouri House. To pass any piece of legislation is 82 members. There are currently not 109 because we recently had a resignation of a Republican member, so there are 108 Republican members. So if you do your math, they have 26 more Republicans than they need to pass this measure. So once again, 18 in the Senate, and that there are 24 Republican members, and you need 82 in the House, and there are 109 Republican members. Now we're going to talk about economic development incentives. So many people say that businesses aren't coming to Missouri because of the right to work issue. That is once again not an accurate statement. Economic development incentives and corporate subsidies are the primary factor in bringing companies to the state, not right to work. The non-right to work state of Missouri, Ford invested $1.1 billion in the Clay-Como plant in Clay County, Missouri, adding 2,000 jobs, and General Motors invested $513 million at the Wentzville plant. These expansions came after the Missouri General Assembly passed in a special session 3 years ago corporate incentives for those companies to expand. The right-to-work state of Tennessee gave $577 million in subsidies in 2008 for an auto plant. The right-to-work state of Mississippi gave $300 million in subsidies in 2007 for another car plant. The right-to-work state of North Carolina gave $240 million in tax credits to Dell Computer in 2004 to lure the company. The plant then shut down in 2010. So what these facts show you, it's the corporate incentive states give is the reason. And even in the right-to-work state of North Carolina, after they gave them the incentive, they still shut the company down. And we're going to continue on this slide with economic development incentives. One of the publications I would always research to bring in defense to the right-to-work issue is the Site Selection magazine put out by businesses throughout the United States. And in this magazine, in the 2010 edition, which I used to compare it to the previous slides of the incentives the other states had in 2007 and 2008, of the top site selection factors, state and local incentives ranked 5th. The corporate tax rate ranks 6th. The right to work issue is a distant 19th. Missouri has the 7th lowest corporate tax rate. And just for your information, this past week, in the last week of January, on the news is a proposal by the Illinois governor cutting the tax rate, corporate tax rate, from 7% to 3%. And the reason being to try to get corporate businesses to be interested in Illinois. So once again, one of the most important factors in selection of states for businesses is the corporate income tax rate. The next slide shows you from a Missouri Economic Research and Information Center that 63% of entrepreneurs and successful small businesses cited closeness to customers and access to transportation routes with high traffic is the primary reasons for selecting a location. Cost of labor was a distant 8.6%. This slide shows you that transportation is a very important consideration on site selection. 97% of businesses said that highway accessibility is very important. 85% listed the availability of skilled labor is very important. As we continue on the incentives, 82% of companies said that energy availability and cost are important considerations. Missouri has the 3rd lowest business energy cost in the United States, making Missouri more attractive. Missouri companies also enjoy the 4th lowest commercial electric cost in the United States. So as we have continued to state, economic development incentives remain prevalent and continue to be viewed by economic development practitioners as important tools in the quest for state and regional economic growth. And as you can see, this is from the Council on Community and Economic Research of 2013. There is 50 to 70 billion, yes, that's billion with a B, in tax breaks each year through these programs throughout the nation. Now on this slide, once again, we continue with the economic development incentives. No more than 2% of annual job gains across states nationally can be attributed to business relocations anyway. More than 95% of business expansions comes from the existing businesses in the state. 1,800 economic development incentive programs currently in use in states are meant to influence the location of business and investment to promote job opportunities. Now these next few slides are going to show you definitively in state law the names of all the different programs that Missouri as well as the 40 other 9 states have. These programs are tax credits, tax deductions, tax abatements, tax exemptions, tax refunds, and tax rebates. I'm going to take a quick second to explain one for you that's used quite often lately in Missouri, and that's tax credits. Tax credits are similar to basically grocery food coupons. When you go and have a $100 bill at the grocery store and you have $10 worth of credits or coupons, then you get $10 off and you pay $90. The same thing happens with tax credits. When you owe $100 in taxes and you got $10 worth of tax credits, you only owe $90 in taxes. So what happens is the state issues these credits. People sell these credits on 90 cents to 80 to 90 cents on the dollar. And that's how they gain capital for their investments, is they sell these tax credits to other businesses that then in turn use it to get discounted rates of taxes that they have to pay, and then in turn, the business that sells them, that are authorized to sell them by the state, generates capital for investment. And here are some more programs that are used to entice businesses to either relocate or expand. Direct or indirect financing programs providing dollars to companies with or without third-party involvement. Grants, loans, loan guarantees, preferential interest rates, bonds, equity investments, and insurance. A quick example here with the loans and loan guarantees. A lot of times these states will have programs to offer loans, and if you provide the jobs that you guarantee you would provide, then the loans are forgiven. Now, over the last several slides, I have shown you really what gets businesses interested in the state of Missouri. And those are four things: infrastructure, cost of energy, incentives, and a skilled labor force. But let's go back to the right to work issue. What the Chamber has continued to push in certain legislatures is the right to work. In February 2011, the issue was brought before the General Assembly. November 15th of 2011, for the 2012 session, the Chamber pushed the issue. And then in previous slides, I showed the Speaker of the House mentioned it for the 2013 session, and here we are with both the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker of the House pushing the issue in 2014. We have just shown you all the facts that state right to work is not the issue whether or not a business locates in Missouri. But we continue to have certain groups push the issue when we should be pushing issues such as infrastructure, energy, other incentives, and an educated workforce. Once again, last year, to give you an example, these were the bills that were introduced on right to work in 2013 in the House, and these are the bills that were introduced in the Missouri Senate. These are the right to work bills that have been introduced this current 2014 session, and the first four have already had hearings in the month of January. Now let me bring one point to you when we debate the right to work issue for less continually. Over the last 4 years in the Missouri General Assembly, no economic development bills were passed during session. Now, several economic development bills were passed when the governor called us back into session. Governor Nixon called the legislature back this past December to assist in offering some incentives to Boeing, and then Governor Nixon called the legislature back into session 3 years ago to pass an incentive package for both GM in Wentzville and Ford in Clay County. So once again, we get back to the point, what businesses are interested is incentives, infrastructure, education, and energy costs. The right to work issue just needs to be set aside and working on other incentive packages to lure businesses to Missouri. As you can see, the current bills on right to work introduced this year in the Missouri Senate, there is none. So they are pushing more on the incentive side of luring business and setting aside the right to work issue. Now comes to the question, as you sit there and watch this slide presentation, what can I do as a citizen in the state of Missouri? Well, supporters of the anti-middle class right to work legislation are being purposely misled to distract us from law's serious flaws. If this legislation passes, it'll be more difficult for nurses to bargain for safe staffing levels, for construction workers to ensure safe work sites, and for emergency responders to negotiate for things that keep us all safe. If you would allow some people to game the system, it's wrong that only some union members would pay dues when all workers receive the benefits. Because proponents are being intentionally misleading and so much is at stake, it is up to you to talk to your legislators, sharing with them why right to work is a bad deal for Missourians. So you can't decide what to say or where to start. Try using these one-liners to get started on a personalized letter or email to your state legislator. This irresponsible legislation is a bad deal for middle-class Missourians because it's less freedom, less safety, and another attempt by CEOs and corporate interests to attack workers' rights. Plain and simple, this isn't a right to work. It's the right to hurt workers, our economy, and the middle class, and that's just wrong. States without these laws invest more in schools, $53,392, more per student in elementary and secondary education than so-called right-to-work states. Our students are more likely to be performing at their grade level in reading and math. So why does $53,000 come up when the previous slide said $3,400 less spending on students? Because that was just elementary and secondary. When you factor in higher education costs, that's where you get the increase of the dollars spent on students. Currently in Missouri, when you go to a higher education facility of the state, the student is paying anywhere from 60 to 65% of the cost of their education in tuition costs. But 35 to 40% comes from the state of Missouri in subsidies. And the reasoning for this is trying to help educate our workforce. Some more basic, simple facts when writing to your legislators. So-called right to work promotes low wages, little to no benefits, and encourages company to bring in out-of-state workers. In our state, because workers' rights are protected, median family incomes are $6,437 higher, benefits are 21% higher, and death rates at the work area are 36% lower, and poverty is 13% lower. This legislation tilts the balance even more toward corporations at a time when CEO pay has grown 243 times higher than the average worker's wages. This legislation allows cheaters to game the system at the expense of employees who work hard and play by the rules. It's wrong that only some union members would pay dues when all workers receive the benefits. This is not what we do in Missouri. This legislation puts our everyday heroes and the safety of our families at risk by making it harder to negotiate for life-saving emergency equipment, nurse staffing, and shorter response times. As my legislator, you should be focused on job creation. This legislation won't create one single job. In fact, it will result in job losses. Missouri does not need this risky legislation, especially because independent experts, as we have shown in previous slides, say it could lead to thousands of layoffs. Now, how do I find out who my state representative is or who my state senator is? With term limits, they do change continuously. So what you do, it's easy. Google Missouri House of Representatives or the Missouri Senate, and as the arrows show on this slide, once you pull up that page, you put in your zip code, and that zip code will tell you who your legislator is. Now, sometimes there are several state representatives in one zip code. So if you ever look on your utility bill or a few other pieces of mail, you see 4 digits located after your zip code. Put those 4 digits in as well, and that'll narrow down who exactly your state representative is. But you can write to more than just your state representative. And as I experienced in my time as a legislator, what is preferable is a handwritten letter to your legislator. So many legislators will read and respond to a handwritten letter more quickly than they will an email. But if you feel uncomfortable sending an email, write the letter. If you feel uncomfortable writing a letter, then send the email. But at least do some type of contact to your elected official. And this slide just shows you that if you have a difficult time finding those last 4 digits after your original zip code, you can either go to the United States Postal System and find those 4 last digits as well. Stand up for working families, the middle class in your community. This is the slogan that was used in Ohio, right to work is wrong, don't trust it, instead of the one that was used years ago, right to work is a ripoff. You have to make sure your elected officials know your interest in this issue. Thank you for your time.